Good morning, America. It's your host, Steve Harvey, and welcome to the Compromise Feud, where two families argue over the most pressing issues of our nation. Before our first question, let's get to know leaders from each family. Give me John Calhoun from the South and William Stewart from the North. John, tell me a little about yourself.
Well, Steve, I'm a humble statesman from South Carolina. I believe that the relation now existing in the slave-holding states between slaves and masters is one instead of an evil, a good, a positive good, as well as its existence instrumental for the preservation of the Union. Our government has within it a tendency to abuse its powers, a cause for my firm belief in our many great states' ability to nullify unjust laws created by the Washington government. and don't get me started on compromises. I cannot see my way into a compromise. They are but an act of Congress. It may be overruled at any time. The Constitution, on the other hand, is a rock. On it we can stand. On it we can meet our friends from the non-slaveholding states. It is a firm and stable ground on which we can better stand in opposition to fanaticism. Let us be done with compromises and let us go back to standing on the Constitution.
And you, Mr. Stewart?
Good evening, Steve. I'm an elected senator from New York, way more important than yourself. I represent the grand Republican Party, and I'm totally not insanely radical in all my thoughts. There's a higher law than the Constitution, which regulates our authority over the domain, and devotes it to the same noble purposes. After the Mexican-American War, I was disgusted to learn that some of our friends down south wanted to expand this horrendous practice of slavery into newly acquired territories. Firmly, I believe we are not slaveholders. We cannot, in our judgment, be either true Christians or real freemen if we impose on another a chain that we defy all human power to fasten ourselves.
Hey, don't forget about me. They may be the team leaders, but I'm the most important one here. Hello, everyone. I'm Henry Clay, or better known as the Great Compromiser. Has a nice ring to it, right? I'm a son of the West, and I feel all the pride and enthusiasm which that designation inspires. I'm a Kentuckian of the stock that gallant race, who in the days of the Revolution fought and bled for American liberty, and who have since, in war and peace, been distinguished for their patriotism and valor. I am prideful of all that I have accomplished, and I can't wait to do even more when I become president. Although I have some disadvantages, as I am a plain unlettered man, I have not the advantage of an early education, nor the polish which that advantage centers. But forget about that. Just remember, the Great Compromiser.
All right, then, now for our first question. Top 5 answers from the American public are on the board. Since we won the Mexican-American War, name something you think we should do with the territories gained from Mexico. All right, timer starts now.
Well, Steve, I'm going to have to go with following a higher law. I believe there is a higher law than the Constitution, which regulates our authority over the domain and devotes it to the same noble purposes. Essentially, I'm saying there is a moral law that supersedes the Constitution of the United States, and natural rights and human dignity should never be compromised by human-made laws.
Show me higher law. All right, now let's see what Mr. Calhoun has to say.
I believe all the debate on this is just hogwash from the Northerners trying to abolish the institution of slavery across the whole country. They are becoming the majority, and without constitutional check or limitation of power, they will lead this country to corruption, anarchy, and despotism. The South is not asking for more than its rights, but simply to be protected in the institution of slavery as it now exists.
Show me no answer. Mr. Calhoun, you seem gone off topic. Please answer the question.
My sincerest apologies, Steve. I tend to get emotional about these things. There should be no distinction between slave or free states in these new territories. Every man should be able to choose what is best for himself and his family. Slavery should be protected and entwined into these new states for those who wish. The North becoming the majority will take away these liberties and become an instrument to oppress the rest of the nation.
Whoa. Let's calm down here,
Mr.
Calhoun.
Clay, it's not your time to respond.
Let me ask you, what is a compromise? Bet you don't know, huh? It is a work of mutual concession. It is a measure of mutual sacrifice. If we all join the North and South together to deal with these issues, peace will follow in less than 60 days. But we both have to give sacrifices to turn our nation into the perfect country.
You say compromise, but what you mean is to take control over the nation to abolish slavery, to whittle out the South's control, to oppress us. We will get nothing from this so-called compromise.
Well, Steve, Calhoun, I believe outlawing slavery is the answer. These Southerners have ridiculous fantasies of expanding the most awful practice in human history. I can't believe we're part of the same nation. The Wilmot Proviso was correct in saying an acquisition of any territory from Mexico, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall ever exist in any part of said territory.
Whoa, hold up, Will. Can we get that in English for those of us who were born 200 years ago? I think I'm listening to gibberish.
As I was saying, Steve, thanks very much. I believe slavery should be prevented in Western expansion. I admit, abolishing slavery might be impossible, but preventing its spread will win favor in Congress to make such a drastic change.
Well, as for a game show, I got political parity ready to burst.
Guys, I have an idea that's the best of both worlds. It's called popular sovereignty. Basically, the admission or exclusion of slaves brought from one into another of them depends exclusively upon their own particular law. In the new territory, the people living there will decide if slavery is legal or not.
It is very urgent matter that California must be admitted as a free state. This addition to the Union will tip the balance of Congress in our favor further north, and nothing should be compromised with the South on this topic.
You are using your power in our government to exclude the South from gaining new territories. You are pushing us apart almost into separate nations. Apologies, Steve. However, I don't believe I'm feeling quite well at the moment.
Oh, well, he was annoying us anyway. But I wish he was still here so I could tell him that admitting California into the Union as a free state is the best decision for our country to maintain the balance of power between the North and the South. Our goal is to lessen as much sectional tension as possible to prevent a civil war.
Next, name and impact Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin had in our nation. Before Steve Harvey, people had to get entertainment from their books. Can you imagine? First, let's go to Mr. Thoreau. Tell us a little about yourself, sir.
Hello, Steve. I'm Henry David Thoreau, best known for my doctrines of transcendentalism and natural writings. And I think if there breathe on earth a slave, are ye truly free and brave, if ye do not feel the chain when it works a brother's pain. This magnificent writing clearly awakened the American conscience for the cruelty of slavery.
Also joining us is Jefferson Davis, taking over for the late John C. Calhoun, who was unfortunately unable to continue the game due to a not-so-mild case of tuberculosis.
I would like to start by echoing my late and great friend, John Calhoun. May he rest in peace. All we ask for is to be left alone. It is a compromise of the Constitution that the slavery property in the South be recognized as property throughout the whole nation. With this, I comment on the blasphemous, sorry excuse for a book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. It had a horrific impact on our nation. It entirely made up all information about the lives of slaves and included in extreme detail inappropriate content which a Southern gentleman could never dream of doing. This is a work of propaganda against the fine and ingrained institution of slavery.
Even though I've owned over 100 slaves in my lifetime, I'm very against it. I believe that slavery is unjust and a great evil. The difficulty has always been how to get rid of it. This book highlights how slaves are rational beings, and there shall be a curse on the master of all slaves. I support the gradual emancipation of slavery. But I will put the Union first and do what is best to preserve it. I know the Fugitive Slave Act is not ideal, but the North and South both need to obtain parts of the deal.
I believe you are misled. The difficulty is not how to get rid of slavery, but how your caliber of individuals shall accept it as the essential and domestic institution that it is. Whatever be the evils of slavery, it is not increased by its diffusion. Slavery existed before the formation of this union. Thus, men have no right to regard any species of property as something they must give away as a result of federal decision.
Good Lord, these politicians just never shut up and talk forever. Some things just never change, do they? Can't wait to see the TikTok edits of this one tomorrow. And another special guest, best-selling book author of Tom's Cabin, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harriet Beecher Stowe. Before we get your answer to the question, give us just a little bit of information about yourself and why you made the book. Thank you for inviting me to be here, Steve. Well, just for a bit of background, I was born in Litchfield, Connecticut, where I feel as if I gained the opportunity to see slavery from both sides. This simple narrative is an honest attempt to enlist the sympathies of both England and America in the sufferings of an oppressed race. I wrote this book in hopes that through the characters, those who held some sort of opposition to the African American race will be able to see through the dominant cultural assumptions charged against them, and in turn be able to empathize with enslaved individuals. Thank you, Mrs. Stowe, for joining us today. Moving on, now let's hear from Mr. Seward next.
If I could, Steve, in the words of a tailor named Henry Whedon, though a poor man, I craved the patronage of no being that would volunteer his services to arrest a fugitive slave or that would hang 100 slaves. Mrs. Stowe did an amazing job exposing all the horrible truths that come along with slavery. I hope that this book motivates uprising in the South, and I support those who resist this institution through an underground railroad. Action is needed now.
Okay, Mr. Seward, things seem to get a little personal there. Let's calm down and resort to more mild answers, please.
Hey, that's enough. We're doing all that we can to get rid of slavery. The South is very persistent in keeping it. And when I say very persistent, I mean very persistent. Just listen to this excerpt from Southern theorist George Fitzhugh's new book, Sociology for the South, or the Failure of Free Society. Slavery is the natural and normal condition of the Negro race. Slavery is a natural relation between the superior and inferior races. Slavery is a positive good for the Negro, and slavery is the only way to protect the Negro from himself. Unfortunately, in response to Uncle Tom's Cabin, Southern writers produced a number of books called anti-Tom literature to show the good of slavery.
These anti-Tom writings are simply us defending ourselves from Northern intervention in our liberties. I argue that you Northerners are empowered with not passion, not party, but the settled, selfish purpose of profit. This Yankee crusade against slavery is not about the struggle with morality on their conscience, but with the money in their pocket.
All right, finally, name things that are necessary to your family in a compromise between the North and the South pertaining to slavery.
For me personally, it is necessary that slave trade is banned in Washington, D.C. It is expedient to prohibit within the district the trade in slaves brought into it from states or places beyond the limits of the district, either to be sold therein as merchandise or to be transported to other markets without the District of Columbia. Our capital is a symbol of our nation, and we do not want it being represented negatively with slavery allowed.
And for the last question, we have Mr. Lincoln joining us. How are you, sir? And what's your answer to the current question?
Hello, Mr. Harvey. I'm doing well in politics for the Whigs right now, thanks. While it's important to preserve this Union state, I have always hated slavery. I think as much as any abolitionist. We have to take a stand against it, even though there are clear political complications. Therefore, it's a necessity to recognize the evils in slavery. I hate it because of the monstrous injustice in slavery itself. I hate it because it deprives our Republican values
an example of its influence on the world. So I am still open to compromise with our southern neighbors, and land negotiation is okay. But I believe slavery is an issue that the North must take a stand on.
I humbly refuse to provide a rebut to this comment. This comment falls on deaf ears in this hall, like the Northern-controlled government that enacts laws in violation of the states and individuals particularly concerned, as well as against their will. This game show does nothing but disproportionately attack Southern truths.
Wow, Mr. Davis, that's an amazing guess. Temper tantrum and refusal to compromise is up on the board.
That is preposterous. That is not what I said at all, Steve. Why will no one here listen to me?
Davis, you do realize this is being filmed in New York City, right? Ha ha ha. Southerners are always so peculiar. Thank you for inviting me, Steve. As I always say, I'd rather be right than be president. Even though I got 0 points this game, I'll be back stronger next time.
Clay, you're 73. I don't think you're coming back anytime soon.
You all managed to miss the most obvious answer. We need to delay the conflicts and pretend like there are no tensions at all.
Oh, you're so right. Maybe I'll draw up an entire compromise to hide this one, though.
After fierce competition and after much deliberation, Congress still found a way to make everyone unhappy. Till next time, let your family feuds and
Disclaimer. No actual constitutional crisis was resolved in the filming of this show. Side effects may include increased sexual tensions, threats of secession, and passionate debates about states' rights.